enjoy thoroughly to join the classes. Let me introduce to you all our team of today's e-classroom. I am an advocate, Devasena Mehrotra, mediator and of Calcutta High Court and state coordinators from West Bengal. Our guest speaker, Sreelal Warrier sir, is a practicing advocate in Kerala High Court and senior mediator trainer in India. He has 31 years of standing practice with experience in civil, commercial, constitutional, criminal, and taxation laws. Trained in mediation by the European Mediation Training Team in 2004 and accredited by ADIA Chambers UK in mediation. He trained under the MCPC in 2008 and 2009, empaneled as mediator, conciliator, and arbitrator and faculty by the High Court of Kerala and other institutions, including ICADR. He is the faculty members at the MCPC trainings, has been associated as a consultant lawyer with various international firms abroad, US and Middle East, passionate about teaching and is a faculty at various law colleges, university and institutions. Today's moderator, I'm very much happy to announce that Sania Bhatia, fifth year law student of Zindal Law College. Sania, please unmute yourself and say hello to everyone.
Good evening, everyone. Devjani ma'am has already introduced me, but I am Sania Bhatia and I'm in my fourth year, second semester, studying at OP Jindal Global University, and I'll be the moderator for the session today. Before we begin the session, just one thing I would like to tell all our participants for today. We'll be taking questions at the end of the session today. Yes. In case you have any questions, you can put it in the chat box and we will take it up with sir at the end of the session. We'll try to take up as many questions as possible, but if we are constrained of time, you can email me all the questions on the email ID that is given on the invitation that has been circulated, and I'll also write it in the chat box for your ease. Thank you, and I really look forward to this session today.
Yes. As you are aware of today's topic, the stages of mediation, which for me, the most important tool in the hand of a mediator to facilitate progressive dialogue between the parties in conflict. Mediation process is a structured and a flexible process. Mr. Sreelal sir would explain you in detail the various stages of mediation. Now it is over to Sreelal sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, students. I hope you will enjoy the class. It is over to you, sir. Sir, please.
My sincere gratitude to Madam Mitra, advocate mediator, and my friend Thankachan. Pardon? Thankachan, Pushpa ma'am, for in fact, giving me this opportunity to address. And Sania, hope you'll have a good time with your friends. Most respected Uma ma'am, Jawad bhai, and all of the trainers who are here, and my dear student friends. Today, I'm supposed to touch upon the topic stages of mediation. To understand this, or probably for you students to have a better idea on this, I would say it is always better that we look at the definition first, and the most simplest of the definitions that is available. I just have a definition read for you. Mediation is a structured process where the disputing parties get their disputes resolved with the able assistance of a neutral mediator who acts as a process facilitator. It is from these few words that we have to understand why there should have been stages, why it should have been structured, and there must certainly be a good reason for this. There's a good reason why I took this topic, because I used to have a lot of interns coming into my mediation room, and they would watch the whole of the mediation process as permitted by the KMCC. At the end of everything, they would say, "Oh, sir, we feel so sorry for the wife and how sad it is." And then I tell them, "You miss the whole mediation." They were totally fascinated by the emotional aspect and not the whole process. So I used to ask them, before you were sent here, were you ever told as to what you are going to actually watch? Have you been given any idea about the whole process? As to what mediation is, how it would be conducted, what is the whole purpose of your coming and watching this particular process? So they would say, "Sir, we were just asked to come to the mediation center. Just watch how it is." And in fact, we have not even touched upon the subject. So it's in this context, I thought that I should be explaining the stages of mediation, because when they next time go in for the internship, one, into the center and attend a mediation process. Two, when you go along with your lawyer with whom you are interning for a mediation. Or three, next time when you become a lawyer and when you go with the parties to the mediation center or mediation chamber, probably when your senior says there's nothing to look at it, please go. Just accompany the person so they also feel a little comfortable. Or when you have a client and when you accompany them by yourself, and the next, when you choose to be a mediator after the training, how you would identify with each of the things that is happening in the mediation center. This is exactly what I wanted to let you know. So next time you are no more a stranger to the whole process. Now, if I look at this way, again, I would ask you to go through the mediation definition. It's a structured process, though everyone would say it's a very flexible process. Yes, it is a flexible process compared to the litigation. Still, this has to be structured or disciplined to a great extent. Flexibility certainly extends, and the structure, or I would say the design, is to enable the process get much better results. Now, mediation aims at mutually acceptable, lawful settlement. And when we say it has to be a lawful, workable, practically enforceable settlement, you're all students of law. A settlement has to be beneficial to a party if it can be enforced. Therefore, generally, though we say there are 4 stages of mediation, which are supposed to be looked into by a mediator, when it comes to students who would like to know about mediation, pardon me if I add 2 more stages, which would be relevant to you. And that would be basically to make the whole process much, much more effective or more result oriented. Now, let me just tell you. If I give you a case for mediation, at the end of the day, you feel that this is something which would not fetch you any result. Even if great mediators like ma'am or Jawad, sir, attends to or mediates this particular one, at the end of the day, the system is not going to accept that particular mediator settlement. Then it becomes an absolute waste of time, a waste of energy, waste of resources, and also the money that you spend on it. Therefore, a good mediation would certainly depend on a good case that is being referred, or at least a case which is suitable or fit and not disqualified for mediation. Therefore, at this stage, as students, when you go to any of the internship programs, you would certainly look at this aspect. And this would be a stage prior to the actual starting of the mediation, but it's a stage for you all. What a mediator would check at a later point of time would be looked into by yourself at an earlier stage. Now, what is this? Therefore, it has to be a case which is suitable or fit for mediation. And even if a mediator settles it, it would not be disqualified and it would be certainly accepted by the court. That means it implies that there are matters which are not fit for mediation and there are matters which are good for mediation. How would you get this? How would you take this first stage? I can only give you guidance today. I can't be explaining it threadbare for the reason that the topic is I have to explain all the different stages rather than getting into one stage and explain it to the maximum stage. The hint would be that you could read para 18 and 19 of the AFCON's case judgment. The citation is 2010 8 SCC 24. Para 18 says what are not good for an ADR and more so for a mediation, while 19 speaks about what are good for the ADR and what all cases would be good for mediation. Therefore, the first stage is checking whether there is a dispute which can be mediated. Now, you as a student or you as a lawyer or you as anybody who is going to be aiding the mediation process would look into this. You may go through the whole thing and you will check whether such a settlement is possible in such case or it can be referred to mediation. So, first stage, first part is being done by. This is supposed to be the preparatory stage. Once it is a fit case, then what happens? You select the fit case. Now, are the parties who are going to be appearing for the mediation, are they fit? I'm again taking you to the mediation definition. Mediation is a structured process where the disputing parties get their disputes resolved. So it is for the parties. As to what? To get the dispute resolved. Resolve means concluded. It doesn't exist anymore, at least to that extent. Of course, with the assistance of a neutral mediator. Therefore, there's yet another involvement of the parties and whether the parties who are supposed to be the beneficiaries under the litigation are capable of representing it. If not, who is the right party to be taken to the mediation center, who has to represent the interest of the beneficiary. So you will certainly check if you are accompanying a party, whether he is the right person to be taken to the mediation center and he is the person to be participating. Or are there other people? For an example, let's assume that this is a minor suit. It certainly can be settled subject to certain conditions. Ultimately, the court approves or recognizes it to be to the benefit of the minor. But the minor may not be able to participate in the mediation. He may not even understand, and even if he signs, it would not be considered to be a valid agreement. Therefore, then what happens? What happens is, the court would certainly recognize somebody who is competent to represent and the court would appoint. So if in a court-referred matter, the court would authorize somebody to represent. So therefore, you have the right person. Now let's assume it is going to be in the private mediation. In a private mediation, it becomes very difficult for the reason that court will have to recognize an award or a decree to be binding on the parties when it comes to a minor suit. In a private mediation, which would be a simple conciliated or a mediated settlement approved, ratified or authenticated by the conciliator, may not have the value as that you would have in a court-annexed mediation. So you will have to choose whether it is a minor suit and whether it is a right suit for being referred for mediation. Yes, probably yes. But is it something which could have been otherwise mediated privately? You may have to choose. Therefore, you will have to choose whether the right parties are before the mediation process, or the right dispute is there before the mediation or the mediator. Now, once you choose these two things, then the first stage as a professional who is into the mediation advocacy or the mediation process is a party ready to attend this kind of a mediation? If he is not willing, he is not mentally prepared, it becomes a little difficult for even the mediator. It takes a little, not that it becomes totally difficult, The mediator knows, he is experienced how to convert him or his attitude into a different one. However, it would be advantageous for the mediation process if you can get this particular person, prepare him. Therefore, you prepare the case, make sure that the right person is available, get the consent of the party. That makes it a little more simpler. You get the referral order from the court for which you work. You get a referral order, and that referral order goes to the mediator or the mediation center, and the mediator comes in. So the first stage is the preparatory stage. The first stage is a preparatory stage, which includes all these things. Now let us take the first stage. How do you prepare the party? You would be assisting a mediator, though at an earlier stage. Therefore, this is also something which would be contributing to the mediation. You get the party, explain what the mediation process is, and thus make him understand the advantages, etc., which otherwise would be done by the mediator at a later level. Now, when the mediator explains all these things, it possibly could be difficult for the party to understand because he may not have that kind of a caliber to understand, and he may not even ask questions back. But when it is the party talking to you, he would be very free. He would not be stressed at all. He will make sure that he gets all the clarifications, and now he is ready for the mediation. He feels it is good. He voluntarily participates. So you literally aid the mediation process. You make the mediator's role a little more simpler. Now, once you have prepared the party, you have got the referral of the right case with the right person to participate. Then the parties get into the next stage. The next stage is, again, it is a preparatory stage. Preparing whom? Preparing the person who is going to be participating. Now that would be done at the second institution level, where you must have seen, if you go into any of the airlines, how much ever stressed you are, how much ever angry you are, because the whole flight has been late. You will find somebody doing this with nice words, nice smile, which changes all your mood. You feel very happy for some time. You forget all that had happened in the past. Your stress is totally relieved. So that is one way of receiving a person, or it's a reception stage. If a mediation centers have all these facilities, probably the people would have been a little more easy to handle, like in the present situation where we have not arranged for. You receive the party, and then what? Greet him. Of course, you also have to make him sit. So there are three words which you will hear, which you will understand as students. When you visit a mediation center, you will find somebody receiving the person and then greeting the person so nicely, making the person sit. Now you will notice that there's a manner in which people have been made to sit. Parties are made to sit. Parties and the lawyer would be made to sit on one side, either on the left or on the right side of the mediator. Among them, the parties would be made to sit closer to the mediator because they feel they are more important. They should be made to feel. And not only that, there is a good reason why they are made to sit over. The mediator is so keen on watching the body language, the body movements. You learn a lot. Those are techniques probably you would be taught at a later stage. So there is a purpose even for making the person sit close to you. And it's part of the process. Thereafter, now once this kind of a reception is received, the parties are again brought down to their stage. Their mental condition becomes a lot more better. Then you have the next stage wherein the mediator introduces himself to the party. So it's called the introduction. Then the parties who would have been a little stressed, they didn't know how to start talking, they would be asked to do something which they know, for which they would not have any stress at all. So the parties would be asked to introduce themselves. Now in the introduction, they may either it could be a very minimal introduction or it could be a slightly detailed introduction. You may even probe as to what their educational background is. This is just to make them feel that, look, I mean, they are being literally understood. And there is a reason of time for doing all this also. I'll come back to that. Now, once they finish their introduction, you check if they are comfortable. In the introduction, what you do is, you also tell them that, look, you are really concerned about their concerns. Those concerns are something which should not be lost sight of. Assume I am a diabetic patient. And if you are going to start your mediation at 12, it could certainly be a concern for the person because he would like to have the meal at the right time. So all such small things. Or if there is a small baby and the mother would like to feed the baby, tell her or tell the diabetic patient, the parties, that look, as and when you feel like going out for any of your personal needs, please feel free and you can certainly move out, we'll wait for you. So small things would certainly affect the feelings of the parties that you are their man or you are their person. And they feel much more confident to be associated with. The reason is, there is something called, you must have heard of cortisol. Something which I've always enjoyed discussing this, so also using all these kind of concepts. Cortisol is a hormone which the body generates. That has a major role in our body, which literally helps you manage a stressful situation. Assume you have a fractured leg and you're just waiting in front of your gate. Suddenly you find a snake falling just in front of you. What will you do? You will forget that you have a fractured leg, and you will also know, or you are otherwise feeling that you could not have even moved. You need the help of a stick. But with this kind of a hormone working in you, gives you all that kind of energy to just jump and escape from it. Or it gives you a sudden reflex. Suppose if it falls onto your body, it gives you a sudden reflex. It gives so much of energy that your hand just hits it off. So it is something called a hormone which helps you to fight back in situations of fear, to react in situations of anxiety, or all that kind of apprehensions, or when the mind is not at peace. And that is the sum and substance. It either helps you to fight or it helps you to escape, flee from that. Now, assume a situation where a party is here to fight against you, or parties are there to fight against each other because each one has an apprehension against the other person. Each one has some kind of an inimical feeling where the mind is not set free. Or the person is not comfortable to talk and they would like to avoid. Would the mediation be effective? No. If no mediator wants that kind of a mindset in the persons. If they are the parties who are expected to discuss, communicate freely, and if you do not bring the situation, the mindset or the effect of the cortisol, then the position would be that you cannot mediate. The expertise would be in bringing down this particular situation to a very normal, peaceful person or a mindset. The rule is it takes 1/20th of a second to have the cortisol effect, while it takes almost 20 minutes to bring down the cortisol. So if you take sufficient time in talking to them, in getting closer to them, by all these kind of introductory mode, There's nothing wrong. There are different schools which says introduction can be minimal, just to have to get each other acquainted. But there are schools which says that this is a preparatory stage. You're preparing the person to be a closer person who has trust in you, who feels that you are the person who can solve their issues, or the best person to be associated with. So taking time for all these things is not a bad idea. Then comes the next part of it, which is also almost a preparatory stage, where you try to build in confidence in their mind. How do you do that? Not only as regards the mediator, but as regards the mediation process. Even if you have explained to him or her, that means, your party, probably that would not be sufficient. It would have been first understanding. But when it comes from the mediator himself or herself, they get it, or they get it stronger, they take it much more stronger, because it comes from the right person. This is called the opening statement, where the mediator explains as to the concept of mediation. He explains the advantages, the process, the benefits that you have, the different stages that you have, the special features like confidentiality, which they would love to, the privacy, their right to decide for themselves, self-determination, the neutrality concept that is very much there in the mediation. All these kinds of good things about mediation has always been explained to them. You take time, all those rules of, or the ground rules would be explained. Now, once they feel that the process is really good, there is a way in which, you can settle your this thing, and this is the process. Then the mediator steps into the next one. He would slowly say, look, it is true that it is a negotiation, it's a discussion, it's a negotiation. Everything is perfectly fine, but there are certain disciplines that one will have to follow. So he would also explain the ground rules of practice or the process, whereby how each person would be conducting himself. All these would, when explained, would only build up a faith or kind of a trust in the process, so also in the person who is handling the process. Now, they have very clearly understood. If you have had the opportunity to explain to him in the earlier stage, now again explained by the right person, it becomes easier for him to understand and to involve in it. When he involves himself in the whole mediation, after understanding the whole concept, it becomes a sincere involvement. He involves in full, total good faith. This is what is expected in the next stage. So this is the secondary stage. Now let us get into the next one. Once we have this, now the parties are prepared. They have been explained as to what their role would be when the ground rules are explained. Now, in the joint session, what all things would happen? Let us see. Maybe they are received at different times in the office, but they are received at the same time into the chamber. Ever since then, all of them are together in the chamber. If not, there is always a possibility of misunderstanding the mediator. But the parties, if they are not totally or properly briefed by their counsel. Therefore, we receive them, we get them into the mediation chamber and see them do all those kind of things in the joint session. After that, the introduction also happens in the preliminary stage of joint session. The explanations by the mediator also explains that, is conducted in the joint session. And once all these rules are done, then you get into the secondary stage of joint session. Let's see what that is. See, the whole crux of the matter is that we build a communication. We believe in reducing the gap that they have. And what is the worst gap? The worst gap is always the communication gap. Unfortunately, they had this gap and therefore they could not communicate. And therefore there was a lot of misunderstanding which had been sustained for a longer period. built one over the other, and they have totally, thoroughly misunderstood the other person or what he has to say. Now, what a seasoned mediator would do is, if possible, he would restore this particular communication between the parties. Yes, there could certainly be a slow start. It could be a little slow. It may not be so free in the initial stage because they have not been meeting. Look at what we have done in the beginning. We have at least got them together, just closer to them, which they might not have been for a longer period. They would have been probably separated mentally or physically. Now here, they know that, look, he is going to, or he, she is going to face the other person. And now we have brought them within a smaller room, they're sitting together. So the closeness is slowly built. Now, none of them must have spoken to the other person for quite some time. What we would do in this particular session is, after the explanation, we would ask the first party to slowly narrate his version of the dispute. Now he says, or he starts talking about what he felt. Why is not the issue, what he feels about the whole dispute. That is his or her narration of her perceived dispute. Now she explains. We have also told them in the earlier stage that, look, you are getting a chance to convince, after a long time, you're getting a chance to convince the other person or make the other person know what you wanted to say. So this opportunity has to be utilized. Now, the first part is done. In this case, we also explain that, look, you have an opportunity to understand what the other person has been thinking, what is right, which you might not have understood because you have not communicated. So here is a speaker and here is another listener. And one speaks, the other listens. They try to understand a little better. They get a slightly developed concept about what they were thinking. It's fine. Now you have the second person explaining his or her version of the dispute, which is listened to by the first speaker. This way, each one expresses what individual version is. Now, each time, this stage you must have watched when you have gone into any of those internship process, that the mediator keeps on restating whatever the other person says. The mediator also communicates. So here is a communication by one person to the other, or it could be towards the mediator also, and the mediator tries to understand it, and mediator also keeps on restating things that he has heard or she has heard to make the person feel that, look, the mediator has really understood what the party wanted to say. Now, when the party actually talks to the mediator, the advantage is there is somebody else who is passively listening to the version of the first person, and similarly, the second person's version being heard by the first person. So you will find techniques like, and communicative skills like summarizing, restating, all these things would be found in the whole process. Now, this is what you must have seen over there. These are all techniques that a mediator employs in the course of communication to make the other person also feel confident that, yes, he is involved in the party's issues. Now, once this stage is over, each one has understood what the other wanted to say. As usual, there could be a lot of arguments cropping up. You will find the mediator controlling it in a very subtle manner, without offending anybody, very diplomatically. And this is yet another skill of the mediator. Now let us take the next part of it. Once a mediator gets this kind of a process completed, making each person state what is required, indirectly or impliedly making the other person listen, the mediator would also explain along the, while he was explaining the ground rules, as to the opportunity of each person, each of the party, to talk to the mediator in private. If there was anything that the party would like to speak in private or in privacy, or that the party does not want the other person to hear. We get into the next stage. The next stage is a private session. The private session is a very crucial session. In that session, certainly if this is the situation, the party would speak a lot more. The party would go a little more deeper into the whole concept. The mediator would also understand the issues in depth. You go deep into their private issues. It is not that being inquisitive. You don't show that, the mediator doesn't show that, yes, I want to know your, private life. It's not, that's not the situation. He would confine these kind of things to the extent that is required for a successful mediation. Now let us take it this way. In the first one, when both the persons are actually sitting, what would each person think of this? Or probably you must have actually seen this. Each party would take a stand, a particular position. Now you will understand the concept of a position, which has already been explained by Jawad sir and in fact, Shivakumar sir. They take a position. This is what I need. Each one would say this. A seasoned mediator certainly knows that probably this is not what he really needs. Or probably he has not realized what he really needs. But he states that this is what he needs. Now, very interestingly, in the joint session, the mediator gets the opportunity of getting to know why the person has taken that kind of a stand. With the techniques that he has, he would certainly get the party disclose a little more of details, whereby he would say why he took that kind of a stand, what exactly the need is, what exactly the interest is, and what is that this particular person cannot avoid or compromise, or to what extent he probably can withstand, or he can even waive. All these are the things that are explained by the party to the mediator in privacy. There could be private sessions with the party and the mediator alone, or the party and the parties, other relatives who might have come to explain it a little further. And so also sometimes the party as well as the lawyer. The lawyer would certainly clarify. The lawyer would certainly clarify the legal aspects, probably which a mediator might lose track of, or which the client may not know. So therefore, the lawyer's presence also would be at times very, very crucial, very beneficial and important, unavoidable to that extent. Now, this is one, this is what a private session would be. This would be repeated with the other person. You will find that in the course of the mediation, in the course of the first session, in the joint session, over the ground rules have been explained. The mediator would have explained while you were in the session that, look, you both the parties are going to get equal opportunity. And this would be literally demonstrated by the mediator by asking the first person to keep away or to sit in the next room comfortably, and giving the second party the similar opportunity of having, talking to the mediator privately. When I say the party, it could be a caucus with the party alone, his counsel and the party as well as the other relatives who must be very close to him, whose presence would probably make it much more easy. There are times when the mediator would choose not to have the relatives or the other persons because the mediator might feel that it could be counterproductive and were on the contrary, the party literally wants to speak to the mediator alone, she may have an interest which is totally different from that of the relatives or the lawyer. Therefore, there could be such situations also where they would communicate very silently that the party would like to talk to the mediator alone. Now, there could be situations when the party cannot express it openly and the relatives are not in a position to leave. Therefore, it would be such situations where the mediator would again reiterate saying that, look, this is a process to have a private session where the mediator could have a session with the party alone and thereafter with the other persons individually. And you could also have a caucus or a private session with the lawyer. And this would save the party or the lawyer or the other relatives to have a chat with the mediator in private. So it would be better for the mediator even to put it, and you must have seen the mediator doing this while you were watching the mediation. Therefore, we have had the third stage. Now let us get into a situation where individuals have expressed what they want. But unfortunately, this has not been passed on to the other side. Now, there could be situations where now the party is very comfortable. The party feels, yes, to this extent, I have also convinced the mediator. That's what he or she would be feeling. And the party says, sir, to this level, or to such and such level, I have no objection in yourself taking this to the other side. Because that probably would help the other side also to understand my requirements. Though initially I took a different stand. The mediator would also most of the time ask to what extent I can take the discussions that we had in private to the other side so that would help connect the ideas that they have. Now, once a consent is received to that extent, the mediator would carry to the other side for the purpose of a better discussion. Now, nothing private would certainly be left to the other side, and that would certainly be a breach of one of the major factors which would nullify the whole mediation process, especially if you breach the confidentiality or privacy rules. Now, when this is taken, you will find the mediator moving from one party to the other party, talking to the other party, and getting the ideas or slightly better version from the other side, taking it, carrying it subtly to the first party. Now, this is something called a diplomatic exchange of the individual information to the permissible extent. Now, it is in this process that you narrow down the differences and come to certain kind of conclusions or certain kind of consensus. Coming into certain consensus need not always be a solution to an issue. Then what happens? It has to be those consensus which would have a direct impact over the problem and towards a solution. Therefore, such of those consensus alone becomes important and necessary for a successful mediation. Now, let us assume that there is an agreement for sale and somebody has committed a breach. Just an example. Now, the issue is that one person has filed for specific performance, the other person is denying it. The first party purchaser may not be so keen, but he doesn't want to show that. These kind of secondary interest or the other interest would be exchanged with the mediator by the party in private. Because the party feels that he has taken up a stand in the suit and he doesn't want to come out of it at the first instance itself. He or she would take time, pass this message confidentially to the mediator. Now, the mediator now remains at a much higher position. The position is a little more, closer to that of the other party who doesn't want to sell it. Now what? At least there is a consensus to such an extent, though whether it is exchanged or not, both the parties have come to a common point that sale is not mandatory. One. Then what is the next alternative? The person who has paid the initial amount as an advance, she would be losing So her claim would be, yes, let me be compensated for the amount that I have paid. Now, what is compensation would be the next question to mediate. It would be merely paying back that particular amount, whether that would be compensation, or compensation would be the amount that she would have had this money remained with her. That would also vary for the first person if she has been a business person, and if such business person would have made a slightly better profit. It all depends. The question here today in this particular case would be from whether to sell or not. It comes down to how much to be paid. Instead of a specific performance, it becomes a recovery suit. So the whole nature of the suit itself goes. It comes into a different one. Now, how much to be paid? The business person would certainly negotiate on a higher amount than a bank interest because he would have made much more. Though not as much he would have made had he got this property and he would have resold or he would have put to use. But he would still say that, look, there has to be a reasonable compensation. This would be communicated. The confidential figures would be communicated only to the neutral third party. Now, here is a diplomatic vessel, the diplomatic channel. Each one trusts and says. Now, the mediator does not speak or pass on anything which would be adverse to the party who has given the information. It could even be this way. Look, I have paid 10 lakhs as an advance. Now I am asking 11,000 or at least 12,000 to compensate my interest. And the other person says, sir, I have taken 10. I understand. The maximum I can give is 12. There is even much more consensus in this. But we'll also think of a situation where he says, unless I get 15, I am not interested. And this person says, sir, I cannot make anything more than 12. The process would take in all these kind of exchanges, explaining the situations that each one is in. And probably this would also be done, not only in a private session, when the parties feel that, look, now we can talk. We ourselves can, start exchanging our own our own claims. It could also be done in a joint session. However, when these parties come to a consensus, we'll assume that they have come to a situation where 13 lakhs would be the amount that is given, that is agreed to be given. Since he has only 12, he may give 1 lakh at a later point. Here is yet another option. A little more flexibility given to it. So all these kind of flexible options which are acceptable to the other persons, once this is derived and known to the mediator and to the parties, the next question would be the next stage. Merely on verbal assurances, nobody is going to accept an offer or a settlement today. So what is the next stage? Documenting the consensual settlement. Documenting consensual settlement would certainly be drafting a settlement agreement on the terms of settlement. Now, mediator still has got yet another job. He has to make sure that the consensual terms are really understood in specifics to the parties. Now, once they have understood, then he would reiterate in the typical language, which would not be again confusing, and the parties literally understand. Once they understand, then we go into documentation. Documentation is where you as lawyer would certainly be involved in. Parties would just say in their lane, the normal words. But documentation is the legal process, where the legal terminology would be used. However, as simple as possible, it should be. And you don't have to use those kind of complicated legal jargons by which the lawyers understand, the mediator understands, but the parties don't understand. Now, once you draft an agreement, explain it to the parties in the joint session. Again, these two would be done in the joint session. You all come back together, then everything is discussed in the joint sessions. Now, in the course of documentation, you reconfirm that, yes, these are the things that are required to be included. The lawyer gets into the role. The mediator requests the lawyers to draft down this thing in terms. And once they draft it and bring it, he would also normally verify if it is a fair process. He would also verify whether it is in order. Because we are all lawyer mediators. We are not layman mediators or some other technical person. I mean, as an engineer mediator. Even an engineer mediator would be specializing in those kind of terminologies or agreements which are relevant to his technical information. Because he is a specialist mediator. Now, we start drafting the mediation agreement. How do we draft? The last stage is supposed to be the closing stage where we do all these things jointly. Now, the terms of these settlement agreements are to be reflected or to be formed or transformed into a decree. Therefore, a judge would not like any kind of flexible terminology. He would like to have it more in the form of a decretal terminology. A decretal, wording. Why? We may say, no, in mediation, anything can be written as long as the parties are, happy with it. As a mediator, I probably may have some kind of a reservation for the reason that, yes, you may have understood this. Even if it is a little complex, the legal implications would have been explained to you by the lawyers. But let us understand that here is going to be a decree, and the event of this not being acceptable to these persons, or they don't implement it after the decree is formed, then here is a third party who is a judge who is going to enforce it, who has not understood, has not been a party to the mediation, but he would only look into this particular, a decree that has been prepared by the person, the original judge. The judge must have even changed. It has to be understood by him, and he would accept as a judge the typical decrees. Now, if you make it so flexible, uncertain, and ambiguous, the judge is going to be in trouble. So you as lawyers probably would be concentrating on the fourth in the following manner. I'll just tell you why. A decree is normally, it is a well-structured document. The terminology is also well-structured. With respect to each solution for a problem, a legal solution, here is a typical legal remedy or a relief. And you must have learned a lot of relief-oriented statutes. They have specific words. Now, how do we use this? The best method would be, the shortcut would be, just have a look at Order 20. It explains how the decretal terms are to be used by a judge. So even for a judge, when he has doubt, he refers to Order 20. As lawyers, it would be easy for you also. Rule 6 onwards, it says how the decree should be, what should be there in the decree, how the wording should be, etc. With all those clarity. Now, if you still have a doubt, please go to Appendix D. Appendix D talks about the format, or it provides for formats of the decree with respect to each of the reliefs, which would be a solution for each of the problem which you have in legal power. So you get all those formats. Please try to adopt that. And if your party wants to know, you explain this. Now, in short, every decree, I would say, every decree would have these kind of things. Minimum. What is to be done? So what has to be explained? If it is relating to property, there would be a description by schedule, etc., etc. You may have a detailed session on this. What is to be done? Who will do it? For whom you are supposed to do it, or the beneficiary? And if there are counter things to be done, then the same way what the other person is supposed to do and what this person is supposed to do in response. How this has to be done, when this has to be done, where it has to be done, at what time this has to be done. So if you check all these things, it would be so clear and there would not be any ambiguity. The last one is, what if the person does not perform within the time stipulation in the manner that has been agreed? So you would also have a default clause. So when there is a settlement, documentation comes into the fourth one, and documentation should be carefully handled. Once it is documented, it is called a settlement agreement. I think most of the state rules have Rule 23 and 24 as the relevant rules. Once you complete this, you will find the mediator preparing asking the parties to sign in acceptance of the terms. And since the mediator may not be able to identify the parties, mediator would also ask the lawyers to sign for the purpose of identification of the parties or verification as to the right party and to the contents. So the mediator does not become accountable for the draft and the contents, because here is the party, here is the expert who has been. Thank you. Yeah. Once that has been done, in certain situations, certain rules prescribe. Thank you, ma'am. Certain rules prescribe that the mediator has to sign. Certain places, it does not prescribe that. So go through the rules wherever it is applicable. And this agreement would be reported to the court. How do you do that? The mediator prepares a report. Most of the state rules say that only a report needs to be given, a copy of the report needs to be given to the party. But some of the state rules and other institutional rules says that the copy of the agreement is also to be given along with the mediation report. Therefore, you would have noticed that the mediator sends a report to the court, and the last stage where you still have some kind of a responsibility if you are going to be a lawyer, there would be a posting where the judge would like to go through, verify the name in a settlement agreement. After verifying it, if it appears to be a defective agreement, he would certainly have a hearing on this for a further clarification, and he may even point out what the defect is. If there is a genuine defect, he would even advise the lawyers to clarify it to the parties and get an confirmation as to what they really want. And if there is a modification that is required as to the words, that would also be asked to be done. Once it is, the defects are cured, it becomes a perfect one. Normally under Rule 25 of all the rules in India, barring a few exceptions where it is 26, the judge would convert it into a decree. Yes, as a lawyer, you apply for the decree, certified copy of the decree, and as a genuine party, he would certainly enforce it, or he would implement it by himself. He would honor it. If he does not honor it, you again have the last stage, which is exclusively the lawyer's post-mediation role stage, where you apply for an enforcement and get the fruits of the mediator settlement agreement and the whole process to the party that you represent. I believe these are the stages. From a pre-mediation stage where you as a law student should be involved at this stage onwards and get acquainted, until the post-mediation stage, which is the seventh stage, where you have a lot of responsibility to help the party. Thank you very much. Open forum, and I leave it to the moderator for the next topic.
Thank you so much, sir. I think a lot of us as law students are going to take this process with us when we go next time for any mediation procedure, because you've explained in such a simplified manner. Sir, I think in case we have any questions, I don't see any questions in the chat box as of now, but in case the participants have any questions, you can either raise your hand or put it in the chat box. I think we'll wait for a couple of minutes. So just one request before this is a request from our side, from the EMW team. So if you can share with us any PPT or any reading material on this particular topic for our reference later on, it will be really, really helpful. So in case you can.
I'll send a chart to you. I have not relied on, I was just talking. I'll just prepare a chart for your convenience and easy understanding, and I'll pass it on.
Thank you so much, sir. I think that will be of great help.
If there is time,
does anyone?
Ma'am,
yes,
if there is, and if there are not many questions, one or two things I would like to add. I thought,
please,
you're giving me a warning that it is over.
No, sir, please go ahead.
Fine. Now, I said in the last stage, see, we are all gentlemen, no doubt about it, but still in life you could have more problems. Now, this would become a message for these people that, look, here is a method. You don't have to go to the court. The best method is to adopt a kind of mediation. Of course, wherever necessary, in certain cases, you may have to come through the court. Otherwise, you could go by private mediation. Now, as a closing part, what do? A mediator always attributes the word success to the parties. So you acknowledge their cooperation, their ideas, and thank them for all those. Don't forget the lawyers, because lawyers are the ones who certainly encourage the parties to come in. So you thank them also. You equally attribute the success to them. 2, at the end, so you acknowledge, thank these people, and what happens is, because of this, they would never forget the process. And they would certainly remember this, that this process is a savior for them as and when they have an issue in their life. So that probably would help the mediation process also to grow. So as lawyers, mediators, promoters of mediation, you are certainly bound to do the last part of it in a more than the most, what do I say, the most gracious way that you can, much more than anything else. The last minute, if you give them that kind of a consolence, I'm sure they're going to come back to you, even if they don't have a dispute. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We don't have any questions in the chat box as of now. I request all the participants, if you have any question, please put it in the chat box or unmute yourself. Raise your hand and I'll unmute you. I don't think so. Push ma'am, I don't think we have any questions. Would you like to say anything?
Thank you, Sreelal sir, for giving us wonderful presentation. Rather, we have learned a lot from this presentation. We are getting benefited with each and every class. So we have with us Uma ma'am, we have with us Jawad sir also, Sangeeta Ji is here. So if they would like to share on this topic, please, student would be delighted to have additional word from you, ma'am. Veena Devaraj ma'am is here with us. Jawad sir.
Certainly.
Since we are left with few more minutes for this class to go, and they're already so clear with what Mr. Sreelal sir has deliberated and presented, they don't have any queries. But sir, Jawad sir, Uma ma'am, Veena ma'am, please let students with more understanding.
Mr. Jawad sir would certainly give it a finishing touch. Mine was just, he was addressing the students basically more than the trainers and the mediators here. I thought I would simplify the student level, in fact. Mr. Jawad would certainly.
Please, sir.
Add to ma'am also.
So am I going to say something?
No. You can go ahead, Jawad.
No, I just wanted to understand one thing, that how I look at the stages of mediation is, Sreelal did a wonderful job. How I look at the stages of mediation is that, see, joint sessions and private sessions are tools which a mediator uses in a mediation. So the stages of mediation are, because we need to understand, as Sreelal pointed out, the definition of mediation, it's a facilitated negotiation. So basically, a mediator is facilitating the negotiation between the parties. The question comes, why can't the parties directly negotiate with each other? The difficulty there is, when parties are directly talking to each other, there are some challenges there, because the question arises as to how they perceive the conflict, how they perceive each other, whether they are really in a frame of mind to understand each other, to listen to each other, because everybody's, the whole view is colored by their own perceptions of what is right and what is wrong. So when you bring a neutral third party and make that neutral third party sit there to facilitate the negotiation, it is important for the neutral third party to first and foremost understand how the parties are perceiving the dispute, and number two, to make them see the dispute or the conflict from each other's perceptions, help to understand from each other's perspective. A classical example of that would be that, usually every program, every mediation conference, this beautiful example is given, where you draw a figure of 6 on the floor, and one person stands on one side and another stands on the other side. One claims it is 9, the other claims it is 6. So now they are standing in their positions and looking at it, So it looks to them from their perspective as 6 or 9, depending on where they stand. The mediator's job is to bring them to both sides, one person to the other side, and help him to see why this person is insisting it is 6, and help the other person to understand why it is 9. So that is a mediator's job. Now, how a mediator does that is he uses the joint and private sessions as tools for the purpose of, first and foremost, as Sreelal rightly pointed out, the opening statement. The mediator makes an opening statement. I don't want to go to the pre-mediation thing because there won't be much time for it. So a mediator basically first, assures the parties that I'm a friend of yours. I'm here to help you, and explains the mediation process, the characteristics of the mediation process, because it is a voluntary process. There is a lot of confidentiality that is involved, because if you want the parties to really open up and tell you everything, you need to assure them about the confidentiality. It is a without prejudice process, because if the mediation fails and they go back to any other form of dispute resolution, maybe litigation or arbitration, their position does not get changed. Their rights don't get compromised. So that part of it, the mediator assures them and lays down the ground rules of how the communication is going to take place. Very basic ground rules. When one person speaks, the other should not interrupt, and not use any strong or abusive language and all that stuff. Now, this opening statement has its own features and characteristics. Maybe some other time when we get the opportunity, if Push gives us the opportunity, we will explain in more detail about that. The next stage is information gathering. Okay. Now, without knowing what exactly is at the crux of the matter, if the mediator is going to jump into trying to solve the problem, you're going to end up with a lot of mud on your face. Okay, because you're going to fall on your face and hurt yourself and hurt the parties in the process. So you need to have that information. That information is not just the factual matrix of the whole dispute, but also how it has affected the parties emotionally. Okay, how they feel about it, how they look at the dispute. So this the mediator does in joint sessions as well as in private sessions. Okay, so joint and private sessions are not stages of mediation. They are tools and techniques that a mediator uses to help to understand where the parties come from, what is the problem, how they feel about it, what are the real underlying issues that are there. Because the conflict may manifest itself into something completely, the dispute will be something different, but the underlying conflict may be something completely different. I can give you many examples of that, but we are running short of time. So I don't want to add on to your burden of sitting here for too long. Then the mediator also then challenges the perceptions of the parties. So this is always done in a private session. Okay, because if the party is looking at the dispute in a particular way, very politely and gently, the mediator pushes or nudges the party into looking at it from the other person's perspective. Okay, could it be like this? Could this party have understood this matter like this? Can we look at it from a different perspective? So these kind of open questions the mediator asks challenges the perceptions, thereby destabilizes the parties and makes them ripe for understanding what the real underlying issues are. Then comes the third stage, where the identifying of the issues. What are the issues that need to be negotiated? So once the parties agree that yes, these are the A, B, C, D are the points on which we need to resolve, it is not like how the courts frame the issue. It is something much more than that. Apology might be an issue, trust might be an issue, relationship might be an issue. Now, those are not issues that you find happening in the court. The courts don't recognize those kind of issues. They are confined only to the legal issues. So here, the emotional issues, the factual issues, the legal issues, everything comes into the subject matter of discussion. Then you go into the negotiation stage. Okay, so you have the opening statement, you have the information gathering stage, you have the issues identification stage, then you go into the negotiation stage. Here, the mediator, what the mediator does is tries to discuss with the parties as to how exactly what is it that they really need. Because we have these, you might have heard of positions, interests, and needs. Parties come with their positions. This is what I want, but what do they really need? So the mediator helps them in identifying those needs and brainstorms with them, trying to find out different options of how those needs can be met, keeping in mind the other party's needs also. Now, all this is covered by confidentiality, generally done in private sessions, so that parties can talk freely to the mediator. Mediator assures them of the confidentiality, does not breach the confidentiality at any point of time. Okay. And then once the parties have come up with an offer that yes, this is how, the mediator tests the offers, and then with the permission of party A will carry the offer to party B and say that this is what the party is offering. Now the other party may have something else to say about it, may have some modifications to be made, may have a counter offer. Mediator listens to that party, tests the offer again with that party, and then carries it back. This back and forth goes on. Negotiation is completed, and then the conclusion comes. The conclusion is, as Sreelal pointed out, how you formulate that into a form of an agreement, where you make sure that the agreement spells out everything. Okay, the who, the what, the when, the where, the why, everything is spelled out, including a default clause should be there. So all these things are done by the mediator. So that is what I just wanted to add on to what Sreelal said. Thank you for the opportunity, Sreelal.
Thank you, Jawad.
Thank you, sir. I think that is cherry on the top after such a wonderful session that Sreelal sir has given us. Thank you, Jawad sir, for sharing your views as well.
Students, you're blessed to have the best of faculty for this classroom series. First Sreelal sir, then Jawad sir adding to the topic of the day. And now we can have few words from Uma ma'am also. Ma'am, please unmute yourself and just share your comments on topic of the day. Let the children take back the full complete cake with them, with lots of cherries.
Thank you, Pushp. I think Sreelal has practically covered every aspect of it. And of course, Jawad, what can I say? He's always there to give you the real input on all this. But I just wanted the students to remember, see, when it comes to a dispute, what happens is we are positioned. There's a whole lot of literature on positioning theory. Why people become like that. There is a sort of an entitlement. There is a sort of claim on rights and duties. And even at home, when you have a difference with your parents or with your siblings and you want something, even about going to a vacation or buying a laptop or something, when you say you stick on to that, you don't look at the other person, you're not effectively listening to the other person. So mediation is a process where it opens up a space for effective listening. So that is what is more of a soft skill, whether you people become mediators or not. It enables you later in your interpersonal relationships also at every level. And so understanding why this is necessary, you have to have this process. It's just like welcoming a person inside your home. The way you stand at the doorway and welcome them, or the way you're standing ready to take off, shows whether they want to come in. It's like that. So already parties are hurting. There are people who have a problem. They are not able to solve it by themselves. They are diffident about handling it over to the mediator because they have gone to court and they are wondering why they are shunted to another place. And it is at this point, the mediator has a double task of not only promoting mediation, helping the parties to understand the benefits of mediation and exploring their possibilities, but also establishing credibility. So there is a whole lot of, burden on the mediator, and that the mediator is able to effectively do by going through this process. It's like an arithmetical sum. Unless you go through various stages, you won't be doing it logically. And so as Jawad was saying, these things are tools. These are steps where you go into negotiation. You finally end up with an agreement, or you end up with persons at least understanding the situation. So the process at any point of time cannot be given up at all. You may have to realign it in some ways, that's all. But you have to find out your own way, depending on the culture of the parties, depending on the situation. But you have to remember that unless you do an introduction, you won't get parties in to at least peep in to see what is there. See, how do we explore as a child? We hear a sound, or we smell something good, even from a bakery. And then following that smell, you go into the bakery as a child to see what is there. It's just like that. You entice them slowly. At every level, people are enticed only by the senses. So either by your demeanor, by the space that you provide, or the way you communicate to them, that is how you slowly entice them into the whole dialogue. And remember, it is always a dialogue between the parties. It's not for us to pontificate on, showing them what we know or what is best for them. It is for them to find out why they have not been able to talk to each other, or they have not been able to reason it out to each other or understand the other person's point of view. So the takeaway, I think, is for you students to pause today, start an exercise where you listen to your friends, talk to each other to understand whether you're really understanding them in the sense that they say something to you, and it starts there. The practice starts there. And then when you go into this process, you follow the process, you do the mediation, or you follow somebody else doing the mediation, you'll be able to understand why the structure is important for you to reach the stage where parties at least go away with a smile, even if they don't have an agreement. I think enough has been said about the process of mediation, so I don't want to go into it specifically, but yes, I'll leave you with this thought that this is a skill that will help you, whether you become a mediator or not, at your own personal level, to be the person you can be in every situation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Uma ma'am. Thank you so much. I think you've left them on a very wonderful thought, and it really matches with what Mr. Shiv sir has said on the last class, and he said, through these classes, you will not become a certified mediator, but you will definitely become a better person, and you'll take lot of skills as a good mediator and as a better advocate. And the communication, the role of communication and dialogue certainly is so important, that our next topic on next Saturday is communication, importance of communication, which our very dear friend Sachin would be taking up with the class. And Sreelal sir has really given us an opportunity to work more on these stages. And in fact, I have posted on a WhatsApp group, which is there with our students, that we have learned so many new aspects about the stages of mediation. Earlier, our thinking was something different about stages, but today he has added on to many other aspects, which definitely needs a lot of more reading. And if Sanya, as you have requested from sir to give some PPT and reading material, we would definitely take those PPT and reading material for ourselves also. We are always greedy for learning.
Exactly.
So we are open to this. Yes. So, but just so wonderful. Thank you, Sreelal sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Devjani, over to you.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for sharing your valuable comments and valuable thoughts. I hope students have enjoyed thoroughly.
Yeah, they must have, but we can see there are few dropouts also. So we need to convene one PTA meeting also with their parents, so that they take it a little seriously, and they're there with us on next Saturday. So thank you, students. Thank you, Mr. Sreelal sir, once again. Jawad sir, Uma ma'am, Beena Devaraj ma'am, Sangeeta Mehrotra ma'am also joined, Jyoti, Rajesh sir, Anup, and kids. Thank you so much once again. See you on next Saturday, and we'll share with you whatever material sir provides us with. We'll definitely put that up on that group, WhatsApp group. Already the PPTs by Mr. Shiv sir and Jawad sir has been posted by Mr. Thankachan on the group, but we'll share more PPTs with you. Sreelal sir, anything you want to conclude with?
Nothing more.
Please, sir.
I'll send the flowchart.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thankachan sir, is that fine?
Okay, then we can conclude the session now. Any other questions there?
Yes.
So I think we can conclude now.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.